Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Spiritual Awakener podcast. I'm Susan Kennard, and I'm here to help you understand a little bit more about who you are, the amazing soul that you are on this planet. You know that you came here for a really important reason. You may not know exactly what that is, but your soul definitely knows. And sometimes you have these spiritual awakenings or these turning points in your life that you can look back on and you can say, oh my goodness, now I get it. Now I understand why I needed to go through what I went through. So, this is a podcast where I get to interview really cool people about their awakening stories. Now, I know that they can't tell me all their awakening stories, and boy, we have many, but they do share with me pivotal ones that have led them to help you guys and myself because we are all one. So, I can't wait to introduce you to my next guest because when you think about pleasing everyone, we've all done it, right? But Lizzie Moult has a particular way to help you understand that. So, thank you, Lizzie Moult, for being here on the Spiritual Awakener podcast. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hi, Susan. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited for our conversation today.
Yeah, sure, Lizzie. Thank you. And for those of you that are stateside or, wherever you are in the world, I'm recording this in the UK. And Lizzie is actually in Scotland. However, you might want to listen to her accent because she's not actually from Scotland. So, Lizzie, do you want to just tell us where you're from?
So, I'm from Australia. I'm from the East Coast. Yeah, you're going to be able to tell my accent. I'm a very dry country Australian girl. So, there's a lot of words that I'm learning here in Scotland that really pronounce ours. And, we
Yeah.
cut ours off completely.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting, isn't it, being in different places? I have a very southern English accent, and many people say to me, "Oh my goodness, do you live in London?" And I'm like, "Well, no, I live on the south coast of the UK." However, wherever you go in the world, and I've been to Australia and New Zealand and all over, I think you start to pick up the twang, don't you? So, do you
Absolutely.
feel you've not been there long though, have you? You've only been in Scotland for a few months.
9 months now, I think it is.
Yeah,
But
yeah. You're
I
in the
promised,
rebirth stage.
yeah, I promised myself though, because I lived here in my early 20s.
Yeah,
And I came back to Australia with a total different accent.
yeah.
But this time I promised myself, I'm like, okay, like this is a practice I'm going to cultivate to make sure I
Mm.
stay true to myself and
Yeah,
don't lose the accent.
yeah.
Like there's some
I don't think you
localisms.
will.
Well, I'm focused on not losing the
Yeah,
accent, but I'm learning
yeah.
local terms like, my wee kids, right?
My wee kids. Yeah, yeah. That's the Scottish thing. Yeah.
So
It's also
it's,
Northern Irish as well. Northern
yeah.
Irish.
So like
Yeah,
that tiny
yeah,
little word, I can
yeah,
still say it, but say it from where I'm from,
yeah,
but
yeah.
incorporate it. So I'm really practicing this time. Like, stay Australian,
Good
stay
fun.
Australian.
It's really good fun. It's really good fun. So, Lizzie, what would you say, as you introduced yourself, and I know, I spoke a little tiny bit about people pleasing. How would you say, that you want to introduce yourself in this podcast? What would you say?
As in, like, professionally or like.
Yeah, like what do you help people with? We're going to talk more in more detail about that, but why did I say about the people pleasing? What do you think that?
So, my work here in this lifetime is to share my story. And, this is what your podcast is all about.
Yeah,
I discovered that my biggest lesson in life was what I was here to
mm,
teach,
yeah,
which is
absolutely. Yeah,
which is
yeah.
around people pleasing, you know.
Wow.
So the moment one, do you want the full story?
So yeah, so really, so what Liz is going to talk, we're going to have a chat about is really about, you know, how does that happen in our life? Like if you're listening to this and you're like, oh my God, yeah, I always please others. I don't think about myself. Lizzie and I are going to have a conversation about that from many different angles, I feel, not just from the spiritual perspective, but from our human perspective as well, and probably the patterns, of why we've done that in our life and perhaps how we can heal that as well. But Lizzie, if you can talk about, how did you kind of come across that? What was your spiritual awakening? that led you to understand that?
So as you speak, like we do have a lot of moments that are spiritual awakening moments. But
Mm,
back, I think it was 2020, I
mm,
was trying to run an event. Like I've had run one the year previously for
yeah,
100 women. It was like spirituality,
yeah.
self-development mixed with like business learning. It was really cool. 100
Mm,
women came. It was fantastic. I was like, okay, I'm going to do this again. However, the second one, I just kept getting roadblock after roadblock from Australia's worst ever bushfires. Australia's
mm,
like whole east coast was flooded. So
yeah.
every single time I'd go to
Remember
launch
that?
like new tickets,
Mm,
it was just like I was met with disaster after disaster. The day that we sent out press releases to every single publication, every radio
mm,
media possible, was the day that
yeah.
COVID landed in the media. That was the
Wow.
day that I was like, okay, what's
Yeah.
happening here, universe? Like,
Yeah.
what's going
Yeah.
on?
Yeah.
It was also the day that I was creating the timetable for the event. It was 2 days, 18
Wow.
speakers.
Yeah.
I was putting everyone's names up, but guess what? I'd forgotten mine.
How interesting.
And I
Wow.
was like,
Forgotten your voice.
I did it again, right?
Mm,
That
mm,
word, I did, that sentence, I did it again,
yeah.
That was the moment where I was like, oh, wow, like here I am. This
Yeah.
event was to showcase my magic, my story,
Yeah.
but yet I didn't
You had
even
made space for you. There was
know.
no space. Wow.
And so
Yeah.
from there, I lost the event, obviously, because of COVID, because events,
Yeah. Yeah.
we couldn't do in person anymore.
Couldn't do
So
any in-persons. No.
my whole business went kaput. I was a mess on the couch for good knows like 3 weeks. My children were jumping all around me, and I was just like a blubbering mess. And
How old are your children?
they're now 8 and 6. So
Oh, well, they're really little. Mine are nearly 15, so 14 and a half, and just 13.
yeah, well, that's the thing, right? So having the older kids. So like for me, my kids had only like just started like school for the very first
Oh
time, and
my
COVID
God.
rocks around. By the
Yeah.
way, that was a nice few weeks. Now you get to be home again.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
only was I a mess, I was juggling them and trying to homeschool them and showing up
Yeah.
for them,
Yeah.
like, and that's the thing, like we please
And
people
trying to work.
and
And trying
trying
to
to
work.
work.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it was a huge moment. And I went into a big journaling phase of like, okay, I need to get to the bottom of the reason why this was
Mm.
a thing for me and
Yeah.
why was I like consistently and continually pleasing others. And it's not
Yeah.
to say that we're not allowed to be kind to other people and do
Mm-hmm.
things for
Sure.
people.
Yeah.
It's about when it comes to us sacrificing our own well-being and
Mm.
our happiness for others.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where I was. So I went on to study.
But you must have, but just thinking about that now, we know, don't we, that that today is never about today. So there's some of the parts of what we're experiencing in our external, we can talk about frequency, but our external world is a reflection of our internal belief systems and our internal world, right? So you must have had experiences and inklings, maybe in relationships, maybe not, but you must have had inklings where perhaps you had been the people pleaser or your mother was, and no judgment with anyone, by the way, if you're
No,
listening
no.
to this. We're not judging her mother or my mother or anyone. We're just saying that when you're brought up in a situation that perhaps someone is people pleasing, you bring that in as perhaps an experience. That's just one area, right? But or maybe you had to please someone. Maybe that's what your role was. You had to please someone. What do you feel led you to play out that role as a people pleaser?
It was funny. I was actually triggered back in my mid 20s
Mm,
by someone coming up to me. Being a country Australian girl, one of the things that we're taught
yeah,
for those in the country is storytelling. You sit around
yeah,
and you share stories. And it wasn't a
yeah,
competition thing. It was just like, oh my goodness, your fish was this big, or
yeah,
I
yeah.
climbed a
Oh
mountain this
wow.
big, and this cow did this, blah, blah, blah. Like it was about entertaining and storytelling. It was like an art
That's a
form for
bit
me.
like circle time here. We
Yeah.
have circle time, yeah, for kids. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's,
Yeah.
a sharing space. So I was at a party and someone pulled me aside and was like, hey, Liz, like, why do you have to prove yourself all the time? And I was like, what? I was
Wow.
like, excuse me, like, what do you mean? He's like, well, every single time you tell a story, it has to be better than the last person's. And I was like, oh my goodness, like what? So from that moment,
A hard thing to hear, right?
right,
I would imagine.
I
Yeah.
completely shut down. So that was the moment that triggered me. Like we are all people
Mm.
pleasers, like from day
Yeah.
one, because it's a learnt behavior.
Yeah.
It's also, trauma as well, can be
It's
involved with
also
that.
survival, right?
Yeah,
Survival. So
absolutely.
it will be probably our, tribal aspect of ourselves, our raw part, but also, our ancestral, our
Yes.
past lives, our everything. Yeah. Mm. Yeah.
So for me, hearing that, I shut down.
Mm.
So I decided that, because this is like the most common trait for people pleasers, like we stop believing in ourselves. We stop showing
Yeah.
up for ourselves because we no longer feel adequate for others.
Mm. Mm.
So in
Mm.
that split moment, I decided that, oh my goodness, everyone who I thought I loved doesn't like me. All of a sudden, my stories, I shouldn't share, I shouldn't talk anymore because no one wants to
Wow.
hear what I had to say.
Yeah.
So if I fast forwarded 10
Yeah.
years to that event,
Yeah.
of course I didn't put myself in the schedule. Why? Because I didn't believe I had a story to tell because I'd stopped telling stories for a
Yeah.
decade.
Yeah. Wow.
So that's the
So,
moment.
how old were you when that kind of light bulb happened and you shut down a bit of your heart that day? How old were you then?
I think I was like 26, 27. From
So,
memory,
do
it
you
was like
think there
late
was
20s.
anything? Because I always believe, I don't know about you, but my specialism is early trauma, early childhood trauma was where I was trained originally, and I always feel that the 0 to 7 is like a really, really kind of influential. Obviously, before then in the womb
Absolutely.
as well, but 0 to 7, like looking at that, do you feel like there was anything? And when if you're listening to this, guys, just listen and just feel into this as well, because this is maybe a little bit of heart opening that we're doing together here. But if you think about, how was it for you growing up? Do you feel like your mother or father, you were the pleaser for them, or you found that from your mother or your father? What do you feel?
First of all, 0 to 7, I'm 100% with you here. Like those years, we are so
Mm,
impressionable. Like this is where
yeah.
we're learning what life means. Thanks,
Yeah.
parents. Thanks, extra caregivers, all of those
Yeah. Yeah.
people that
Yeah.
were in our lives at the time. Um, absolutely, as a child,
Mm,
our
mm,
role, even, like we all did this. Just want to see my parents happy. We
sure.
we
So
want the
pleasing, yeah.
validation of a smile, a hug,
Yeah.
to feel loved, and
Mm,
that you know to feel loved,
yeah.
at a young age. And if you didn't have that or experience that,
Hmm. Yeah.
that is people pleasing at its root, right?
Yeah. It's incredible,
Um,
right? Mm,
so you're continually trying to get the people around you to feed that validation of like you are loved,
mm. So
and so
this
you'll
will
do.
play out in, if I'm thinking about, kind of relationships in the sense of friendships, but intimate relationships as well,
Yeah.
with partners and so on. This is obviously something that is, going to affect, those dynamics, isn't it? If we're thinking about, well,
I'm
you're
giggling
laughing.
because it's so true for me.
So for the yeah, so for those that are not watching this on the actual video on my YouTube and across social, but are listening to this on audio, before Lizzie was laughing, actually she was really smiling, and we're smiling together before we actually say anything, because it makes sense that, if you are in the profession of helping others, which we both are, and it's our job, it's our mission, let's call it, to help others. Be sure that we did this work because we were trying to work something out of ourselves. And I know definitely, being a psychologist, psychotherapist, all that stuff in my previous life, I know that as much as it's been amazing for me, it was a journey I needed to go on when I look back now. And I'm sure it's the same for you, Lizzie. And if you're listening to this and you are a counselor, or you call yourself a healer, or, your channel, whatever, there will be a reason why you're of service that way, because you were working it out yourself. I love that, don't you? No
I do.
blame, no shame, no judgment, just that's just how it is, right?
Well, we
Yeah.
have to call it, right?
Yeah.
And the thing
Absolutely. Well,
is,
authentic, being authentic. Yeah.
yeah, well, we have to be that honest, like
Mm.
calling it, like, well, I've done the work and I have to honor my giggle before of like,
Yeah.
the pattern, like, yes,
Yeah.
as a child, like seeking that love, like that was me.
Yeah.
Of course, I did it with partners. I had
Yeah.
several relationships before I've met my husband where
Yeah.
I was just like, pick me, pick me, pick
Yeah.
me. I'll
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
anything. Yes, yes, yes. And then I met
Yeah.
my husband and I'm like, he's just showering me with love. I'm like, what do I do with this? I've never experienced this level of love before.
Yeah.
And, he was just giving it
Yeah.
with ease and with love and with like honesty. Whereas
And
I've been forcing it before.
you not needing to actually, yeah, like prove yourself, which is
That's right.
kind of a lovely segue from what we was talking about before, was
Yeah.
this need to prove yourself. So let's go back. So basically, you had this experience when you were in your 20s, which we've now looked at and said, well, actually, there was, there'd be dynamics between 0 to 7, even earlier, probably, that we don't know about, that we don't know. Yeah. And
Mm.
then it plays itself out. And then, so what happened after that? So 2020, everyone's going through their own spiritual awakening.
I
Yeah.
know,
I know I
right?
flew back from San Diego early March 20 when Trump closed the borders. So I just got back into the UK and it was closed. And I was speaking at a new media summit, actually, which is the podcast stuff. Yeah, I was speaking on stage there. And I got back, and then the whole world was just like, oh, okay, let's go through this spiritual awakening. Um, what happened then for you?
So for me, as I mentioned, I did a lot of journaling,
Mm,
and what I realized was like, okay, I had this problem. Like this was what a reoccurring pattern that I had of my own. Um, I went on to get counseling. Yeah, counseling, but I also went on to study cognitive
mm,
behavioral therapy.
yeah.
I was diagnosed as a high functioning autistic from my
Wow. Yeah.
psychologist because of the way that my mind works, and also like my very heightened sense of emotions.
Yeah.
And we all go through periods of
Yeah.
heightened sense of emotions and things like that. So I, for years, um, was always like, why am I so different? Like, what
Yeah.
makes me
Like couldn't
me?
work it
But
out. Yeah.
we all have a very complex mind,
Mm,
absolutely. But for me, I just got so engrossed with, okay, how does the mind work? How do our patterns become like what they are?
mm,
Like, why does our behavior do this? I spent the next 2 years studying pretty much. So that's got me to here. And, I needed to get out of where I was in Australia because it felt heavy and
mm,
icky and just like, I just need to feel
yeah.
expansive. Like I
Yeah.
did so much healing. We were living off grid in a
Mm.
rainforest, which was beautiful
Oh
through
wow.
COVID.
What part of Oz?
So near Byron Bay. So for anyone who's
Mm,
traveled Australia knows
mm,
Byron Bay. It's
yeah.
the most easterly point,
Wow.
most beautiful beach. So we were 40
Yeah.
minutes away from there, in a rainforest, which is beautiful.
Incredible.
Still our home. We still have it.
Yeah.
Um, but I needed that place to nurture and really come in on who I
Mm,
was, because it
yeah.
was a soul discovery. Like I
Oh
had to
yeah.
relearn who I was. Like, why did I
Mm,
do that? Why? I had to question everything.
yeah.
So for the last 2 years, that's what I've been doing, and I ended up writing a book, which is
Mm.
awesome. It's not
Excellent. What's your book called?
it's not out yet. Still,
Oh, it's out. When's it out? It's a bit like mine then, because mine's being
I know.
edited right now. So
I'm
what,
about
you
to
don't know when
start
it's
getting
out?
it edited. I'm hoping next
Oh,
year.
fantastic.
So
Mm,
80,000 words, like just
yeah.
poured my everything into it, life
Yeah.
experiences, lessons, all the things. Um,
Did you want to say a title or are you
I
not quite
can.
ready? Okay. All
Dancing
right.
in the Wild.
Oh, wow. Dancing in the Wild. Wow.
I
Yeah.
love your accent. I'm like,
Powerful.
dancing. I'm like, yes, it makes it sound even better.
Dancing. Not dancing.
Dancing.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Dancing in the Wild.
it's a labor of love, but I needed to
Yeah.
go through that to
Yeah.
move through my lessons and my
Yeah.
learning,
Yeah.
so I can then support others, because I knew that this message that I had,
Mm.
like, I'm so passionate about it. I'm like, why do you do that for Like, you shouldn't be doing that. You should be doing you.
Yeah.
I get so fired up about it. I'm like, well, I need to be sharing that more. So I've
And do you find
restructured
it's
my life and business. Sorry.
something that's just coming to me about that? Like, so I've obviously written my Mind's Out this year, actually, Awaken the Light Within Your Heart. So it's all my trauma processes and the guides channel through it, which is I'm loving. I'm loving the whole editing, publishing process of it. But what I was going to say was that yes, that's massively a journey when you write a book, isn't it? It's not just like you write a book and then that's it. And it is for others. It's a message for others, but it's also cathartic and healing for yourself, isn't it?
There was
It's like that journey.
there was days I was just bawling my eyes out
Wow.
writing because I was reliving experiences.
Mm,
To like, so with the way that my mind works, like to articulate what goes on, like I have to
mm,
pull it apart, like every
mm.
single moving piece. And, like
Yeah,
it's like I'm in that situation again. And,
yeah,
it's hard to fight some of those situations because you're like, well, I've already lived that. I can't change what's happened. I
no,
can't kick
no,
myself because I didn't say this or I didn't do X, Y, and Z, like
yeah,
it's like, well, okay, well, here I am now. I get to honor that.
yeah,
As you said, like there's steps, like it gets
like
us to
steps.
like be where we
Hmm.
need to be because we need those
Yeah.
lessons. And if we didn't have those lessons,
It's the
like
growth of the soul, isn't it? It's
well,
the expansion of the soul, and
it'd all be
and
so boring.
yeah, and with the sum of the parts of everything that we've experienced, and when you write a book, it's not just you writing a book, it's you literally with the sum of the parts of all of your life experience going into that book. And you might not talk about your birth, but essentially you're talking about your birth
Yeah.
because you've got everything. And when you work with people as well, like you're not just getting someone who's done a degree maybe or a couple of courses, you're getting someone that has however many years of their life bringing it to you. Yeah.
Life experience.
Life experience. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So you're planning for the book to come out this year or 2023?
I would have liked it to be this year, but I've
Yeah.
also had a few things that have decided
Yeah.
that I had a course that I first created after COVID
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
support the people pleasing and how to
Mm.
digest it. And I ran it a few times. So I'm rebirthing that as well this year.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's like they both feed each other.
Mm.
So to
Mm.
make each other better. So I'm kind of like, well, I'm carrying these two
Putting it together.
beautiful pieces
Mm.
together
Yeah.
and they'll form together when the time is right. And I have to just
So
magically.
Lizzie, if people want to kind of have a look at this stuff on your website, can you just say your website just so that people can.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me at Lizzie, Lizzie, Moult, MOULT.com.
Mm.
So I always like for those,
Good.
molting. Like I've got a lot of hair. Where's my husband? He's balding. So like
He's
he's the
been
one that's
molting.
molting. Exactly. So not a whiskey molt. I'm losing my hair molt.
Yeah, it's a different malt. Well, being in Scotland, she thinks about the other whiskey malt, which is MALT.
Yes.
Malt whiskey. But yeah, so basically, looking at that, looking at all that for you, then how do you help people? So how do you, coming from where you've come from, understanding who you are now, writing the information, creating courses, how do you help people?
So
So
at the
people
moment,
listening to it and they're
yeah.
interested in working with you.
I've got a couple of resources, free resources on my website. There's a quiz and journal
Mhm.
prompts. I'll share that in a minute. I also offer like one-on-ones. So it's called Prioritize You because obviously the remedy to people pleasing is putting your own needs first.
Prioritize you.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. So
That's like,
people can have a private session with you. And is it possible if they mention the podcast, The Spiritual Awakener, with me, if they mention it, could they get like a 10 or 15-minute kind of chat with you where they could
absolutely.
then make a decision whether they wanted to, embark on that journey? Would that be okay as a,
Absolutely. I actually prefer having chats with people before I work with them
yeah,
because you've actually got to be committed to doing the work.
yeah. Yeah. so definitely take Lizzie up on that. You know, you'll be able to contact her via the show notes on this show. But if not, you can go over to her website, lizziemoult.com, and contact her, because you can have a conversation with her with no attachment, like just a
None.
conversation. And then if you feel that there's, you know, you have a recognition together that you can work together and really do some really deep work, then that would be a good journey to go on. Yeah. Okay, good. So what else, Lizzie? So how does it work with your family? You know, how does that work? You know, the stuff that you do, how does it work around your family? Because I have a family, so I know what it's like.
Yeah. So my husband is super supportive. I'm very, very
Mm,
grateful. But one of the things I always swear that, he's my rock. And I think
mm,
for us, it's having open communication.
yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
slightly probably too organized. I have like post-it notes and calendars and, charts of frameworks of how everyone's week's going to be. But, you know, we all work as a system and like
Yeah.
as a unit, like we have to
Yeah.
communicate. It's about communication. So, you know, I work between the hours that my kids are at school. There's often I
Yeah.
do clients mostly from the US in my evenings, but
Yeah.
I choose which nights those are going to be. So it's not
Yeah.
affecting my whole week because
Yeah.
still
It's
my
like me.
priority right now with small kids is to be a
Yeah.
mum.
Yeah.
Once they turn
Exactly.
teenagers and don't want to know me, sure, I can change my schedule. But right now, they're young.
Did
We've
you ever
moved
do that
countries.
though? Did you ever do that? Because I definitely did in my early experience of having my business and being therapist that I am. I filled, you know, I used to fill my diary completely, which I don't do now, which I don't do at all now, but I used to. And then I'd find I'm like, oh my goodness, I've got no time for me, you know?
So that's a really good point. So this is going to go back to our very, like one of your earlier questions we talked about. The
Mm,
reason why I choose my kids,
mm.
but like, I love my husband as well, yes. And I do prioritize him. But while they're little, for like, especially for those mums that are listening, like
Mm,
I was the kid who didn't feel the love.
yeah.
Okay. So
Mm,
now that I'm getting emotional, I wanted to make sure that my kids
yeah.
feel that love.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that I sacrifice everything and everything for them. I don't.
Yeah. Mm,
Like I
mm,
still like,
mhm.
well, mummy's got to work tonight. You
Yeah,
know,
same.
these things do happen, but
Hmm.
I don't feel my weekends. I don't feel every single night because
Hmm.
I want to reinforce to them that I'm here,
Yeah.
and that I'm here to listen and be supportive.
Hmm.
Whereas, my childhood experience was not that.
So
And
you're
it's not to say
stopping the cycle. So basically, you're stopping
yes,
the cycle, is what I'm hearing, you know, from
yes.
my guides. And it's like stopping that cycle so that they don't need to people please.
Well, it's funny because I see it in my kids. Like they do it.
Mm.
And
But
I,
that, I think that's natural that
it
children
is.
want to kind of, you know, please their parents and be, you know, like, yeah, I think that's kind of natural. But it's when it becomes like they have to do it to get any attention.
Well,
That's a different thing.
as I mentioned
Mm,
earlier, it's the difference between where it's sacrificing your own
yeah,
emotional and mental well-being and your happiness.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
once you switch that, like, my daughter, bless her, she's probably the worst out of the two of them for it.
Mm,
But I'm like, hey, sweetheart, like you can make a decision. Like, cause I see it with her
mm,
friends, as well.
mm,
And I'm like, well,
yeah.
what do you believe? What do you
What
feel?
do you want?
Like,
Mm,
and I know she's only 8, but at the
mm.
same time, like
No,
it's
yeah,
giving her the skills and the ability to make a
yeah,
choice for her.
exactly. Yeah, yeah,
It's not like your teachers are like the boss. I'm your
yeah,
parent, I'm your boss. Like,
yeah.
you have to meet my
It's
standards. It's
bringing
not
it
just
back, isn't it? So it's
yeah.
bringing it back to almost like they have got a voice, they have got an opinion, they have got a reason to say yes or no. Yeah, and not sort of taking that away from them. So I'm just thinking about here that if you're listening to this and you feel guided to do some work with Lizzie or contact her, what sort of things do people come to you for? What sort of things? So, for example, what sort of
Oh my
client base
goodness.
do you attract?
Oh, there's so many. I do actually work with a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs.
Yeah,
Because they are like they're carrying, I call it the mother load. Like there is
yeah,
so much going on and
mm,
they're drowning.
yeah.
Like I
Doing
want
too
to like
much.
doing too much. Like that
Mm,
is usually the number one thing. Also with business owners, especially, like it's about visibility. It's about showing
mm.
up. A lot of people are really worried about putting themselves out there.
Right, yeah.
And it's that lack of confidence and lack of self-esteem. So,
Mm,
and that does cross over, like I've worked with moms, I've worked with people in a 9 to 5, just
yeah,
to reestablish who they are, like because they've lost themselves. Because at the end of the
yeah.
day, um,
So how do
they're
you do that, Lizzie? How do you do that? What happens? How does it look?
how does it look? Sessions really. So I usually work with someone for 3 months to begin with.
Mm-hmm,
So that way you can actually see
mm-hmm.
change.
Yeah,
But all online, it's
mm-hmm,
conversations and it's pulling apart patterns and
yeah,
behaviors and our learning and actually
mm,
digging deep and questioning like what's our truth, what isn't.
yeah,
So yeah, I use cognitive behavioral therapy. I'm also
mm-hmm,
an internationally recognized life coach. Dabbled in a bit of positive psychology as well. And
mm.
yeah, I'm continually learning because once again,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
science and the mind, I'm like, give me more.
But Lizzie also, because obviously, if you've been listening to me, you know that I work with my guides. I'm known as a spiritual scientist. I, channel and so on. But Lizzie also works with her guides, which she hasn't mentioned.
No.
So, so you not only get, we not only work with you from a kind of traditional perspective of psychology, etc.,
No.
but we're
Yes.
also being guided all of the time. So I would imagine, Lizzie, that it's fast because definitely now as the veil is a lot thinner and our connection to our guidance is much stronger, then it's going to be faster work than the old days. I call it the old days of, kind of trawling through, because obviously we're guided all the time. In the days of psychotherapy, it was, you know, 6 months. Do you know what I
Like
mean? And now
pushing
it's
up
like,
something up a hill. You're like, come on, come on.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because what
Oh,
we don't know is what we don't know, right?
no.
We don't know what we don't know. So it's like when we've given that guidance and we're working with someone, it's like, does that make sense to you? Oh yeah, 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 that does. So then you can actually go there. So I'm sure that's how you work, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
read people.
yeah,
It's very scary. Like one of my things, people's body language and
yeah,
everything to like just how you respond to a question, like
yeah.
there's things and
Can
then
feel
stuff
it.
just drops in of like, oh, I need to ask you this.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Surprise. I don't know where that came from, but answer
Yeah,
it.
and it's always pivotal. And it's like, well, we chatted, Lizzie, didn't we, before we went, well, before we started recording, before we went live. And I said, well, we're just gonna, we're gonna go with it. We're gonna go with the flow. And it literally, we knew that we would just be guided with a conversation rather than actually having a particular structure. As much as we have a bit of a structure, we don't really. And I think that's probably how. So if you're listening to this and you feel drawn to work with Lizzie, then know that it will be where you need to go with it. So you may have come with a set of experiences and a plan, but that plan could well be changed because your higher self, I'm going to go there, your higher self and your soul knows exactly why you're there and here and in this experience.
I love this.
So,
My
so
whole thing is change. What is it? Breaking the rules. I'm here to like,
yeah,
people to like embrace their inner
yeah.
rebel. Like it's there, it's
Exactly.
waiting.
Because it's like, because you've been, we've been like the schooling system, we've been told to do this, we've been told to do that, we've done our qualifications, we've done all of that, and had to follow a structure. And what's really lovely, I think, is now in this experience of working with people, we can be creative as they can be creative as well. and we don't have to answer to anyone, which is kind of my guides are stepping right in here. So that's really fun. So Lizzie, you know, we're coming to the part where we're kind of wrapping up. So is there anything that you would like to share, and any last thoughts that you want to share with people, my community?
I guess like just know that life is a journey, and in
Mm,
regards to people pleasing, we all do it. And
yeah,
it's not to say that when you do it it's wrong. It's knowing when it's actually, you know, you're sacrificing yourself, and that's
yeah.
what we need to question. I do have a quiz on my website. I highly
Hmm.
recommend you get to find out like your people pleasing personality. Like some of it's
People
like,
pleasing, PPP, people pleasing personality.
yeah, like it gives you a bit of an insider as to like some of
Yeah,
the things that we do. Some people are really
yeah,
like apologizers, some are like super
yeah.
busy all the time. Like there's a couple of personalities, so you can learn more about yourself, so you can
But the
start
British
addressing.
apologise all the time. Have you noticed that since you've
Oh
been
yeah,
here? Sorry, oh, I'm
sorry,
really sorry.
sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
My
We do
opinion is,
that. Yeah, we do that naturally.
so
We
I
do
actually
that
challenge
naturally.
people. I know.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, you
Like,
don't need to say sorry. They're like, what?
yeah,
I'm like, stop saying sorry. You don't need to apologize for yourself.
I
What do
know.
you mean?
What,
I'm like,
where does that come from? If we're thinking about, the UK, because I don't say sorry because I'm particularly sorry. Do you know what I mean? It's just because it's
so
like
that's a
language.
reaction, right?
It's a
It's a
language.
reaction. So that's a behavior that
Yeah.
you've learned.
Yeah.
So in this country,
Honest, it doesn't affect me in any way, shape, or form. But
but
yeah,
it learnt behavior. So
yeah,
as a country, if everyone's doing it, you become doing it. So we talked earlier about accents. It's like me
yeah,
challenging the status quo. I'm like, no, I'm going to
yeah,
stay in my authentic self and be
yeah,
Australian, like as
yeah,
possible.
yeah,
So what if, you realize that saying sorry was not your
yeah.
thing, like, and challenging that, like
And in
it's tricky.
Holland, right? In Holland, because I lived in Holland for 2.5 years. Ik sprak een beetje Nederlands. A little. Ik praat een beetje Nederlands, maar ik vind het heel moeilijk. I can speak a tiny little bit of Dutch. But I found that, and this is not, I'm not saying this to be offensive to Dutch people, by the way, I'm just laughing about it. I actually found the Dutch really rude. And that
So
was
did China.
because yeah, that was because I was there in my late 20s, and so when I lived there, and I had a Dutch boyfriend at the time, and I just could not believe that people did not say excuse me and sorry, because I'd been brought up, this is quite funny, right? So I'd been brought up with that's what you did, and
Yeah,
especially even the older generation would push you out of the way and not say excuse me or anything in the supermarkets. And I was like, what is this country? Yeah. But then I realized that, as you were talking about like this behavior that we create, they created it from their
yeah,
own colloquial Germanic, whatever it might be, and we created ours from our British upbringing, and so there's no right and no wrong.
it's writing your own rules.
Yeah,
It's
so
so
it's
cool.
so interesting. Yeah, I'm going to be aware when I say sorry now. But to be honest, I don't feel any subservience with it. It's
Yeah.
like it doesn't make me feel, oh God, I'm really sorry. That doesn't come into it. It's just like, oh sorry, like
So that
it's
one's
like
an unconscious one, right?
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
this is where
yeah,
it get for me, like this is where I get like really interested, because I'd still
yeah,
challenge you on the unconscious ones because they
yeah,
compound,
do.
right?
Yeah,
So even
yeah,
though you're unconsciously doing it,
yeah.
there's still a level of like, I'm apologizing for something.
I know, right? It's going to make
So
me much more conscious of it now, Lizzie. So those of you that know me really well, my members, my soul family,
she's not allowed to
but
say sorry anymore.
yeah, I don't think I do online though. That's the thing. It's probably just in physical person. But my friend Corinne will be listening to this. So, Corinne, if you listen to this and I say sorry a lot, or you do, we're going to pick each other up on it.
And and I want to just like with this
Mm.
sorry thing as well, like you can say sorry when an apology is required.
Oh, yeah,
So
but not
just a
just
heads
as
up, not
a,
just
yeah,
because
yeah,
it's just a flick of the tongue, because
yeah,
that
yeah,
flick of the tongue, it compounds, like it really does. Like it's an
yeah.
unconscious behavior that you've just held on to for no
Yeah.
reason. Like
I'm 52 years old. Okay, so I've held on to it for long enough. Yeah. Woohoo! On the Queen's Day that we're recording this in the archetypal British celebration here on the 2nd of June 2022, I have decided to take that bit of the British out of me.
That's huge.
So lovely, isn't
I'm
it?
gonna hold you accountable to this. I'm gonna
I'm
come
fine with
back and
that.
be like, so Susan,
I'm
how's the
fine with that.
apologies?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Yeah. Oh my God, what a great way to end it. I've loved our conversation. It's been so much fun. I really hope you guys listening to this have got a lot from it. I definitely have, and you're going to have to hold me accountable to the sorry. But yeah, if you're listening to this and you feel, a real resonance with it, and I'm sure you do, because, I feel pretty empowered in my life. I feel very, very confident in myself. However, that was something that I hadn't even thought about because I didn't see it as something that affected me at all. But when we think of frequency and we think of our vibration, and words are spells, we are spelling on ourselves all the time. Lizzie Moult, thank you so much for being here on the Spiritual Awakener podcast. I've had so much fun. I hope you have listening in. If you've got a spiritual awakening story that you want to share with me and my listeners, I'd love to hear from you. Find me at susankennard.co.uk or co.uk. Also, if you want to hear my spiritual awakening story, pop over to episode 1, where you hear all about how I was woken in the night. Much love for now, and I'll see you very soon on the next episode of The Spiritual Awakener.